The world is descending into total turmoil right now because of Donald Trump's failed military campaign against Iran, and it's rippling out to affect just about everything. Leaders from nations that have long stood by the US are outraged. Think about figures like France's President Emmanuel Macron, the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, Spain's Prime Minister, and others. They're all openly criticizing the Trump administration without holding back. In return, Trump is ridiculing these countries at a moment when alliances are crucial. I'll walk you through the developments happening globally. France's President Emmanuel Macron stated that the joint US-Israeli airstrikes on Iran, which started this past weekend and resulted in the death of Iran's top leader, were carried out beyond the boundaries of global rules. He added that France does not support them and will avoid joining any aggressive operations alongside the US for now. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer declared, "I refuse to send our troops into illegal operations. That's not what they signed up for or what they merit. They deserve more respect than that." Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk indicated that his country plans to pursue its own nuclear arsenal in the future as Europe bolsters its defenses, given the growing uncertainty about whether the US can be relied upon for support anymore. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni pointed out that it's obvious to Italy and the rest of Europe that without re-establishing the legal standards shattered in Ukraine, the disorder will only worsen. In general, officials across Europe, Canada, and beyond are highlighting how this upheaval stems from the erosion of global legal norms and stability that Donald Trump has undermined. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez commented on the Iran situation like this. Now, more than at any other time, we must recall that it's possible to oppose a despotic government like Iran's, which the entire Spanish public rejects, while also rejecting an unwarranted and risky armed incursion that defies international standards. We must stand against a conflict launched without approval from the US Congress or the UN Security Council, one that breaches global regulations, and remember that talks can always offer an alternative, rather than letting violence pull us into ruin as the sole option. So, I want to repeat, as we've done from the start, our call for quick calming of tensions, complete adherence to international rules in every ongoing dispute we're facing, and the pressing need to restart conversations right away. That's Spain's position, and I think it's where the full European Union ought to stand. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, who's currently on a global tour, he's in Sydney at the moment after stops in India and elsewhere, shared this view. Here's what he said. "This ongoing clash serves as yet another sign of the breakdown in worldwide systems. The US and Israel moved forward without involving the United Nations or discussing it with partners, Canada included." He did mention, "Canada must step in and contribute now, though with reluctance," which seems like a strange way to put it, but he still pointed fingers at the US. Instead of trying to build coalitions or rally backing for a conflict of this magnitude on the global stage, Donald Trump is lashing out at these leaders. Yesterday, during a press event in the Oval Office with Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Trump targeted the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He claimed Starmer isn't anything like Churchill. That's actually the headline on the Daily Telegraph today. Trump blasts the UK's leader for withholding support on Iran, saying he's damaging the historic ties between our two nations. Trump is also warning of trade restrictions against Spain over the comments from Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez that I just shared. He went on to say, "It doesn't matter if Spain blocks our use of their facilities. We'll proceed as we see fit. We can simply arrive by air and utilize them. No one dictates our actions. I believe we ought to halt all commerce with Spain. Don't you agree?" Then he turned to his group of advisors, the ones from his Epstein-linked circle, asking if they should sever trade links with Spain. That's the approach Trump is taking. Let me pull up some video segments from these officials' statements and Trump's reactions. After that, we'll cover more international fallout. First, here's Canada's Prime Minister Carney speaking directly. Roll the footage. "We back initiatives to block Iran from gaining nuclear arms and to stop its government from endangering global stability further. Since Canada deals with reality as it stands, not idly hoping for an ideal one. That said, we hold this stance with some hesitation because this clash highlights another collapse in worldwide structures. Even with years of UN Security Council decisions, the dedicated efforts of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and various penalties and negotiation setups, Iran's nuclear risk persists. Now, the US and Israel have proceeded without looping in the UN or checking with allies like Canada. So, what's next? With the fighting expanding fast and rising dangers to everyday people, Canada stresses that global rules apply to every side in the fight. We denounce the attacks by Iran on non-combatants and public facilities throughout the Middle East, and we urge everyone involved, the US and Israel too, to follow international conduct guidelines. Canada pushes for swift reduction in fighting and stands ready to help make that happen. And here's the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer in his own words. Listen closely. "Putting our service members in situations that endanger their safety ensuring any directive is legal before assigning it to them. I see that as a core responsibility for prime ministers, and past ones have followed the same path. I'll certainly review the opposition attorney's guidance, but I'm firm on the counsel I've gotten, and I won't assign our forces to illegal tasks. That's not what they'd anticipate or what they earn. They merit superior treatment. This is from Trump yesterday, expressing his dissatisfaction with the UK. He remarked, "This isn't Winston Churchill we're facing. That's his jab at the UK's Prime Minister." Here's the clip. What's the outlook? And just so you know, I'm not pleased with the UK at all. That island you mentioned, the lease. Fine. He arranged a lease on the island for some motive, someone seized it from him, and it's taken us 3 or 4 days to sort out landing spots there. It would have been far easier to touch down there instead of adding hours to flights. So, we're caught off guard. This isn't Winston Churchill on the other side. Here's Trump going after Spain's prime minister yesterday. Let's hear it. But certain Europeans, like Spain, have been awful. Actually, I instructed Scott to end all interactions with Spain to begin with, when every European country, at my urging, committed to 5%, which is what they should contribute, and all were on board, Germany the lot, but Spain refused. And now Spain declares we can't access their bases. That's fine. We can access their bases if we choose. We can just drop in and operate. No one's going to block us, but we don't need to. Yet they acted hostile. So I told him we won't. Spain offers nothing essential beyond wonderful citizens. They have fine folks, but poor guidance. And as you're aware, they were the sole NATO member unwilling to bump up to 5%. I doubt they'd agree to any increase. They aim to stay at 2% and don't even meet that. So we're set to end all trade with Spain. We want no part of Spain. Additional comments from Trump criticizing Spain's leader. Has the authority to halt. Kind of intriguing. I possess the authority to halt, but under that specific rule, I lacked the authority to bill him. So I can license them, but not bill, which is honestly absurd. But the authority came from the Supreme Court. And we hold that authority. For instance, we discussed Spain. I could, tomorrow or even today, better yet, cease all dealings with Spain, every business tied to Spain, possess the power to cease it, embargoes, whatever I decide. And we might pursue that with Spain. Your thoughts? Well, sir, we'll discuss it with you. I recognize your solid standing with the Supreme Court to make clear. We know you can apply it, and if required for national and financial safety, we'll proceed. Scott, your view? Oh, sir, I concur. The Supreme Court confirmed your power to enact an embargo, and as we've covered from your initial term, the Section 301s and 232s have fended off over 4,000 legal challenges, and USR and Commerce will launch probes and advance them. And we've applied a 15% duty on all, as you're aware. And just to add, I'll mention we had a few sections in that ruling that were truly remarkable. During this chilly, dim season when evenings come early, all I crave is a hot, soothing, and straightforward dish. Home Chef has become my reliable choice for those welcoming, homemade dinners without the effort. From simple bake-in-the-oven options to robust, fulfilling dishes that turn winter suppers into something smooth, Home Chef keeps the process uncomplicated. Ingredients arrive fresh, directions are easy to track, and the results are genuinely delicious. Folks truly appreciate it. Home Chef tops the charts in user ratings for other meal services in areas like freshness, ease, worth, flavor, and recipe simplicity. They've teamed up with experts like Gordon Ramsay, and currently, they're collaborating with Jada De Laurentiis, delivering top-tier restaurant dishes right to your home. These chef-motivated creations appear in Home Chef's range of offerings, standard kits, and quick prep choices, all aimed at building your kitchen skills. No matter your schedule, Home Chef fits in, from traditional selections with new produce and half-hour preparations, to oven-prepared pans and fast microwave meals, plus a special lineup for family-sized 4- or 6-person servings. And it's tailored, not generic. Home Chef provides more than 30 selections weekly, accommodating various eating plans and preferences. On top of that, it's budget-friendly. Users of Home Chef typically cut grocery costs by about $86 each month. Right now, for a short period, Home Chef gives my audience 50% off with no shipping on the initial box and complimentary sweets forever. Head to homechef.com/Midas. That's homechef.com/Midas for 50% off your first delivery and sweets at no extra cost for life. Homechef.com/Midas. Must stay subscribed to get the free treats. At a time like this, the US requires partners more than anything. Last evening, reports came in about an Iranian unmanned aircraft hitting a US installation in Bahrain. Footage shows a massive blast as it connects with the American site. Another Shahed-type drone targeting a US outpost. We've got various visuals. I put out a clip earlier today showing the CIA office in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, under drone assault. The US diplomatic post in Dubai facing drone strikes. A US aviation hub in Qatar getting pounded by Iranian drones. And as I noted at the beginning, this conflict is expanding worldwide. Donald Trump's reckless decisions and actions are touching everyone at this point. Were you aware that the US is engaged in fighting in Ecuador currently, Did you see the announcement from U.S. Southern Command? They shared this yesterday. On March 3rd, forces from Ecuador and the U.S. initiated joint efforts against identified terror groups in Ecuador. These actions demonstrate the strong dedication of allies in Latin America and the Caribbean to fight drug-related terror. You recall how the U.S. has been targeting fishing vessels near Venezuela in the Caribbean and Pacific waters, and we've covered stories showing many of these aren't linked to drugs. It appears the Trump team is just eliminating regular fishers, with plenty of proof indicating they're not involved in drug terror. Plus, Donald Trump freed one of the largest drug figures, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who operated a drug empire from Honduras. He funneled huge quantities of cocaine and other substances into the U.S., got convicted in a U.S. federal courtroom, and Trump granted him a pardon. This isn't truly about combating drug terror. So, what's unfolding in Ecuador? Donald Trump maintains tight connections with Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa. Noboa frequents Mar-a-Lago. His relatives run the Noboa Company. There were claims that his family's banana shipping operation, the Noboa export firm, sometimes served to transport cocaine, concealed in banana loads headed to Europe, the Balkans, Croatia, and Italy. To clarify, these are accusations. The Noboa kin reject them. Reports from groups like OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, working with partners, detailed several major cocaine busts valued in millions from Noboa shipments between 2020 and 2022. Secret messages from supposed Balkan dealers asserted sole access to those containers for smuggling. Once more, the Noboa family disputes this. Regardless, Trump and Noboa are carrying out these ground operations. We have American troops active in Ecuador presently. That's something to note. Disarray is spreading all over the planet now. From the Middle East to Ecuador, let's shift to Japan. Leading Japanese cargo firms have paused their vessels from passing through the Strait of Hormuz after the US and Israeli strikes on Iran. Worries exist that prolonged halts could damage Japan's fuel access. This is hitting other parts of Asia too. South Korea is feeling it hard. Look at this graphic showing how East Asia faces high vulnerability to interruptions in oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Here's the image. The Japanese authorities have noted they hold 254 days of emergency oil stockpiles, and as expert Jeffrey Hall describes, if the Strait of Hormuz stays shut for a long stretch because of the current fighting, it might pose a major issue for Japan's finances. That's the reason Japan's primary stock exchange plummeted, along with South Korea's market. South Korea's key index fell around 12% yesterday. Donald Trump is even finding opportunities to gain from this mess. Recall his post from yesterday? Effective right away, I've directed the U.S. Development Finance Corporation to offer, at a fair rate, political risk coverage and assurances for the safety of all sea commerce, particularly fuel, moving through the Gulf. This applies to every shipping company if needed. The U.S. Navy will start guiding tankers across the Strait of Hormuz shortly. Above all, the U.S. will guarantee uninterrupted energy supplies globally. America's financial and defense strength is unmatched. Further steps ahead. Appreciate your focus on this. Remember that announcement? As Representative Joaquin Castro observes, the president has just declared that the U.S. will supply insurance and naval protection for oil vessels in the Middle East, following his own escalation into war with Iran. Hardly any of these ships head to the U.S. The top purchaser of raw oil from the Persian Gulf is China. Japan, South Korea, and others take up to 40% too. So it seems the U.S. is funding and safeguarding oil deliveries to China and other places. Trump mentions deploying naval vessels to the Strait of Hormuz and providing coverage. That means putting our personnel in danger for what looks like a quid pro quo arrangement. Is that the deal here? I'll add this from Brett Bruin. I've handled removals and rescues of U.S. citizens in combat areas. It's incredibly careless what the Trump administration did, advising everyone in the Middle East to evacuate as projectiles rain down, without offering the proper safeguards to exit safely. It breeds panic and disorder. In the end, it could heighten risks for our people, and that's exactly what the Trump team is causing. Let me highlight a few more points worth noting. The U.S. interfering in Iraq's voting process. Yesterday, Iraq's coordination group decided to pull back the candidacy of Nouri al-Maliki, the Iraqi figure and ex-prime minister, for the top job. Per local reports, the decision happened without Maliki, whose bid faced heavy pushback from the U.S. because of his strong links to key Iranian figures. The sitting prime minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, whom U.S. officials don't view as equally aligned with Iranian goals like Maliki, leads the pack as a likely agreed-upon pick. So the U.S. is installing someone in Iraq less aligned with Iran. As I've pointed out, the current dynamics in the Middle East involve all these factional divides, Sunni against Shia, the ongoing endless conflicts across the region, that Donald Trump is stirring up now. Trump's latest move is directing the CIA to supply weapons to Kurdish groups, whom the U.S. has let down repeatedly, and urging those Kurdish units to enter Iran and aid the U.S. in the fight there. Do you believe that's the plan? Then, Reuters reported that the U.S. has prepared charges. The Justice Department has drawn up accusations against Trump's associate Delcy Rodriguez from the Maduro setup, who's now in charge in Venezuela. She's assisting Trump in oil sales and shifting funds to accounts in Qatar. Trump apparently wants to dangle this charge over Delcy Rodriguez to ensure she follows his oil directives or else face indictment. But Trump's old defense lawyer, now second in command at Justice Todd Blanche, calls it total fabrication. Unsure how such misinformation reaches outlets, but we recognize the Trump administration fabricates on every topic. That's the latest on international developments. Share your thoughts with me.